a comprehensive look at trends, fund profiles, and more in Exploring ETFs.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Exploring ETFs. I'm Meena Mishra, and today we are talking about ETFs that benefited the most from the positive vaccine news. And, in general, stocks have done very well, quite well over the past week, over the past few days, in fact. And that's mainly because of the possibility of a Biden presidency and a split Congress, Senate controlled by the Republicans and House controlled by the Democrats. And this gridlock scenario is kind of Goldilocks scenario for the market because that ensures that the government does not pursue either extreme left or extreme right policies. And in fact, markets have performed best during periods of divided Congress. Now, yesterday morning, we got a very positive news on the coronavirus vaccine front. Pfizer and its German partner, BioNTech, they announced that their COVID-19 vaccine was more than 90% effective in preventing the disease. And Pfizer CEO called this development a great day for science and humanity. And I totally agree with him. And in fact, there are 5 companies in phase 3 trial for the coronavirus vaccine. Pfizer and Moderna were slightly ahead of the other 3. But we may get some more, news like this from the other companies too in the coming weeks. And this was a very important, very positive news because earlier scientists had said that if the vaccine is maybe 50% or 60% effective, it would be approved. 90% effectiveness rate was far beyond expectation. And that's something like a measles vaccine. And in fact, the annual flu vaccine that we get, that is only about 30 to 60% effective. So obviously certain areas of the market, economically sensitive areas of the market, they did very well. Those stocks jumped because we'll probably have a return to a normal world sometime in the mid of next year, or at least a return to normal when these vaccines become widely available for general population. So stocks in areas like cruise lines, airlines, oil, banks that were hardest hit due to the pandemic, they performed best. And some of the stay-at-home stocks that had benefited from the pandemic and safe haven areas like gold and treasury bonds, they fell yesterday. Now let's take a look at the ETFs that performed best yesterday. So the first one we are talking about is an oil services ETF, and we know that oil stocks and ETFs, they are among the hardest hit areas. So reopening hopes benefited oil and related stocks and ETFs. The ETF that we are talking about is by VanEck. It surged more than 80% yesterday. It holds 25 largest US listed oil services companies, has an expense ratio of 35 basis points, and assets of about 421 million. And not only this ETF, other oil services ETF like IEZ and XES also jumped more than 18% yesterday. And if you want to learn more about this ETF, you can go to the quote page on Zacks.com, read our research report, articles, and from there you can go to the external homepage, VanEck's web page for this ETF, and check out what it holds, the top holdings, Schlumberger, Halliburton, Baker Hughes. These are among the top holdings in this ETF. The second one that I wanted to talk about is by ETF MG. ETF MG Travel Tech ETF, ticker symbol AWAY, easy to remember. It holds companies in the global travel and tourism industry has an expense ratio of 75 basis points. This made its debut in February and has gathered 23 million in assets so far. So, because it's a small ETF, please use limit orders if you decide to invest in this ETF. And again, to learn more about this ETF, you can go to the quote page on Zacks.com. And from there, you can go to the external homepage and learn more about this ETF and also look at the holdings in this ETF. So companies like Uber, Expedia, Booking.com, Booking Holdings, Trip.com, Make My Trip, these are the top holdings in the ETF. These are again the worst hit areas of the market due to the coronavirus pandemic. Now, the third one we are taking a look at is the airline ETF, and it is the only airline ETF available to investor. It holds global airline industry stocks, has an expense ratio of 60 basis points. And this has been very popular with investors this year because this is the only airline ETF. So a good way of getting a diversified exposure to US and as well as international airlines. So it has gathered 1.9 billion in assets, and most of those assets came this year. This jumped more than 16% yesterday. And again, to take a look at this ETF, you can go to the Zacks quote page. I also did a podcast on this ETF. You can listen to the podcast. You can go to the external homepage and look at the holdings. So a lot of exposure to the big US airlines, Delta, United, Southwestern American, JetBlue, but it also holds some international airlines, so global exposure. And the last one that we are talking about is a banking ETF. Regional banks were also among the worst hit areas of the health crisis. So KBWR and KRE, they jumped 16% and 15% respectively yesterday. KBWR is an equal weighted ETF of regional banks, reasonably priced at 35 basis points. And this is also relatively small because it has lost assets because of the poor performance. So this is currently at 30 million. Please use limit orders. You can go to the quote page on Zacks.com, read our articles, and go to the external homepage, the Invesco web page for this ETF. And you will see East West Bancorp, Commerce Bank shares, Prosperity Bank shares, all those regional banks, these are among the top holdings in this ETF. On the last slide, I have the 2020 performance of all these ETFs versus the S&P 500 ETF. Now, I have started this chart from 13th February because that is when Away made its debut. So you will see that all these have had terrible performance earlier this year. The oil services ETF is down 47%. The travel tech ETF is, in fact, the best performer. Relatively, it is down about 7%. The airline ETF down about 35%. And the regional bank ETF is also down about 17% year to date, whereas the S&P 500 ETF is up about 5%. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our videos so that you do not miss out any episode. And also make sure to check out Zacks.com/promo for an interesting offer. And I'll see you next week.